Good evening and welcome to Global Lens News. I'm Sadia Afzal. The unfolding tensions and periodic escalations involving the United States, Israel and Iran represent not just a regional crisis but a global strategic moment, one that China is watching with careful calculation. While Beijing is not a direct participant in this confrontation, it stands to gain in multiple ways depending on how events evolve. To understand how China hopes to benefit or could benefit from such a conflict, it is important to look at its long-term geopolitical goals, its economic dependencies, and its broader vision for reshaping global power structures. At the core of China's strategic thinking is the desire to gradually displace American dominance in global affairs without engaging in direct military confrontation. A prolonged or intensified conflict involving the United States in the Middle East serves this objective by diverting American attention, resources, and political capital away from other regions, especially East Asia, where China's most pressing ambitions lie. If the United States becomes deeply entangled in another costly and complex conflict, its ability to focus on containing China in areas like the South China Sea or Taiwan could weaken. This strategic distraction alone is a significant indirect advantage for Beijing. Economically, China is deeply intertwined with global trade networks and relies heavily on stable energy supplies, particularly from the Middle East. At first glance, conflict in this region would seem to threaten China's interests. However, China has spent years diversifying its energy partnerships and building strategic reserves, allowing it to weather short-term disruptions better than many might expect. Additionally, instability often leads to fluctuations in oil prices, and China, with its state-controlled economy, can sometimes exploit these fluctuations more effectively than market-driven economies. In certain scenarios, China could secure discounted energy supplies from countries under sanctions or economic pressure, as it has done in the past. Another dimension of China's potential gains lies in diplomacy. Beijing has positioned itself as a proponent of dialogue, sovereignty, and non-interference, contrasting its approach with what it portrays as Western interventionism. In a scenario where the United States and its allies are seen as escalating conflict, China can step forward as a mediator or stabilizing force. This enhances its global image, particularly in the global south, where many countries are wary of Western military involvement. By hosting talks, proposing ceasefires, or simply advocating restraint, China strengthens its reputation as a responsible global power, even if its primary goal is to expand influence rather than resolve the conflict entirely. There is also a technological and industrial aspect to consider. Wars often accelerate demand for military hardware, surveillance systems, and cybersecurity capabilities. While the United States remains the dominant player in the global arms market, China has been steadily increasing its share, particularly among developing nations. If the conflict leads to broader regional insecurity, more countries may seek to diversify their defense suppliers. China can step into this gap, offering relatively affordable alternatives without the political conditions often attached to Western arms deals. This not only boosts China's defense industry, but also deepens its strategic ties with purchasing countries. From a financial perspective, prolonged instability in one region can trigger shifts in global markets and currencies. China has long sought to internationalize its currency and reduce reliance on the United States dollar. If the conflict undermines confidence in American leadership or leads to economic strain in the United States, it could create openings for China to promote alternative financial systems. Initiatives such as bilateral trade agreements in local currencies or expansion of digital payment systems could gain traction in an environment where trust in existing structures is shaken. China's Belt and Road Initiative also factors into this equation. While conflict in the Middle East could disrupt certain routes, it also underscores the importance of alternative corridors and infrastructure investments. China can use this moment to double down on projects that bypass unstable regions, strengthening its role as the architect of new trade networks. At the same time, countries affected by the conflict may become more dependent on Chinese investment for reconstruction and development, further increasing Beijing's influence. Politically, China benefits from narratives that highlight the costs of Western intervention. Each instance of prolonged conflict involving the United States reinforces Beijing's argument that Western-led security models are destabilizing. This narrative resonates in many parts of the world and supports China's push for a multipolar international order by framing itself as a neutral actor focused on development and stability. China can attract partners who are disillusioned with traditional power structures. However, it is important to recognize that China's potential gains are not guaranteed and come with risks. A large-scale war could disrupt global supply chains, damage economic growth, and create unpredictable security challenges. China's economy is still heavily dependent on global stability, and a severe shock could have domestic consequences. Moreover, if the conflict escalates to the point of involving major powers more directly, China could be forced into difficult choices that it would prefer to avoid. China's ideal scenario is not outright victory in a traditional sense, but rather a managed instability that weakens its rivals while leaving it room to maneuver. It prefers a situation where the United States is stretched thin, regional actors are seeking alternatives, and global institutions are in flux. In such an environment, China can expand its influence incrementally, economically, diplomatically, and strategically without firing a shot. In essence, China approaches this conflict with patience and pragmatism. It is not looking to dominate headlines or take bold, risky actions. Instead, it is playing a long game, leveraging every shift in the global landscape to its advantage, whether through increased diplomatic engagement, economic opportunism, or strategic positioning. China aims to emerge from the turmoil stronger and more influential than before. The outcome of the conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran remains uncertain, and many variables could alter the trajectory. Yet, from China's perspective, even uncertainty can be an asset. In a world where chaos often creates openings, Beijing is positioning itself to quietly, steadily, and effectively capitalize on whatever comes next. This is Sadia Afzal for Global Lens News.